maybe. It says it's going live. Stand by. Okay, it says we're live. All right. Well, let me do a quick introduction here. I rewrote it, so I have less sloppy notes, and I can probably fly through this very, very quickly. If I can find it, stand by. Oh, fantastic. I don't know where I put it. Okay. And that Q Fryer for something hilarious. Impression.
No pressure, Fryer. No
Yeah.
pressure. Just come up with a joke real quick.
Be funny now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay, I found it. I found it. Okay. So today is, I'm checking September 11th, 2024. I would like to, at the risk of alienating some people, I'm just going to go for it. And I would like to take this opportunity to commemorate this day because however many years ago, what was it? Is that 2021? Yeah. Was it 2021?
Yeah.
How many?
No,
22?
2001. It was 2001.
That's right. That's right. It was. So that many years ago, on this very day, World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed into its own footprint at free fall speed. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So today we are here with our special guest, Michael Hartigan, correct? I'm saying everything correctly?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Thanks.
So before we get too far in, we're going to have him, I'm not going to do an introduction because I'm going to blow it. I'm going to have him do it for me. But before we get too far in, if you're into this sort of thing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And turns out my notes were messier than I thought they were. Yeah, so all of his information's in the content or in the video description. Same with Nikki, same with Fryer. All my information can be found at SumerianAstrology.com. While you're there, you can learn astrology, learn Sumerian. You can subscribe to my Substack or my awesome newsletter. I've sent like 5 now in 3 years, I think. And that's going to enter you to win a free 1-hour astrology reading. And it's going to give you a chance to do cool stuff like, I don't know, like free stuff. We do cool free stuff all the time. And of course, all my readings and courses are discounted on that site, and you can register while you're on there to join our free Sunday meditation support group where we do talk about meditation at least for a few minutes, and then we derail and talk about, this kind of stuff that we talk about on this. So, who wants to plug their stuff next? Because we definitely need to plug.
I'll do the pluggeroonies. Hey, I have a website called friarpezzle.wordpress.com wherein you can find my goofy writings and my services that I proffer. And I must say, and I'm not really a horn tutor. It doesn't work very well for me.
You can do it.
But so far, the people, the growing clientele that I have who are taking on my services seem to really be enjoying them and benefiting from them. And I couldn't be happier because I honestly do believe that I'm doing my dharmic work in this. So please, if you're interested, you can either drop me a line at friarpezzle@gmail.com, which is conveniently on screen, or you can go to friarpezzle.wordpress.com where you will see my offerings, including compassionate listening, spiritual coaching, and ritual work.
Oh, we didn't get the drum roll. That warranted a drum roll.
Oh, well, thank you.
That sounded awesome,
next?
Fryer, by the way.
Nikki, why don't you go next? We'll have Michael go last.
All right. Well, I don't have a website. I don't have any of that stuff yet. But you can reach me at my email, revolutionistrology@gmail. I'm a forever student of the occult. I love astrology. I love talking about stars, planets, God, all of it. Like, let's talk about it. So, but that's me, plugging me. I don't like to do that. I don't like to talk about me.
No, but I don't think most normal people do.
No,
it's uncomfortable for everyone.
It is. But that's okay. So
yes. So on that note, Michael, do you want to get uncomfortable
Yeah.
real quick and talk about your stuff?
Oh, sure. I have a website. It's a good starting point. It's OneSkyAstro.com, and I talk a little about how astrology got to where it sort of is today and why I do what I do, which is really similar to what Abby does. And I have a Facebook group called Radical Astrology, which is a sort of hub for just any siderealists who, that's kind of where I draw the line. But even whatever, tropical people are welcome. We'll just sort of explain them why, we do what we do. And between those two, I think I'll just leave it there. As far as like contact points, you can find my email on my website. But I've been an astrologer for 6 years, like just kind of sign hanging professional astrologer, and I've kind of been with it, studying it for like, I don't know, like 25 or 30, I guess. So I'm kind of like intermediate. I feel like in the whole thing, I'm not like a senior voice, but that's me in a nutshell. So I'll just leave me there in that little nutshell.
Okay. So we're going to take a look at the sky and see what's going on, because I need to be notified. I don't pay a ton of attention to all of it. I do the moon signs and phases and everything, especially the moon phases, but the rest of it I kind of check out because I'm a busy girl. But I am really curious, because we talk about this a lot between the tropical and sidereal people. Do you have a theory as to why someone who is aware of what sidereal astrology is, do you have any theories as to why someone just can't get behind it and they're like, no, it's tropical all the way?
I mean, some people are just conformists. I think it's how they're wired. They look to the group and what the group's doing around them, and their whole reference point for that is like, what's everyone doing, and can I do that? And if I do that, will I get acceptance? And like, I've literally done sessions for people, and people I know personally. Like, I'd call them friends, and they've been like, oh my God, that explains everything. I'm actually an Aquarius. And astonishingly, like 2 months later, they're back to it being like, fucking Capricorn season, because they're like, they don't have, I think a lot of people aren't wired with what it takes to swim upstream. It's like a salmon thing, and some of us are salmon and some of us aren't. So I think, and now without painting in broad strokes all tropicalists as like incapable swimmers and conformists, I think that's one explanation that I have seen at work. And another, I think, might just be like lack of familiarity with the history, like people are exposed to modern culture, and in certain modern cultures, it's just tropical. But when you look into the deep history of it, tropical is actually an anomaly to the way astrology developed in all its flavors worldwide. So I think expanding the context and gaining experience with it, it usually I don't know. I have not encountered a lot of tropical people that I just can't speak across that aisle with, that won't see where I'm coming from. I will say that. But I have talked to them, and I've like done chart readings, and I've seen them go back to the mainstream stuff, and I've just been like, all right, that's for you. You must like the social connection. Well, it's deranged. It's deranged. It's so ignorant. Like we say where's the moon right now? It's in my favorite degree of the sky, but would say it's somewhere else. I know you guys are always on this, so I'll just leave it alone.
Well, I'm gonna inject a little kindness into this here, because it's how I attempt to roll sometimes. Speaking for myself, okay, like when did I first hear about astrology? Right, it was probably sometime in the late 70s, because I'm freaking old, and I have associations with that, like discovering this forbidden thing, OMG, and it I got emotions surrounding it, and good emotions, good feelings, like, ooh yeah, I'm checking the spooky stuff. And also tropical was all there really was as far as my ability to get into it. It was absolutely the most popular by far. I didn't even know what sidereal was until I was in college taking astronomy and realizing, oh, whoa, okay, this stuff is like not where they said it was. But we're talking about decades beforehand of
Mhm.
positive associations with tropical, and
Mhm.
now all the same, the attributes of a Sun in Aries person, which tropical claims me to be, I'd always sort of was like, no, I didn't quite relate to that piece, and I didn't relate to a number of things that were supposed to be, part of me as this tropical Sun in Aries person. But I didn't realize there was an alternative, so I kind of wasn't paying that much attention. So I would say that, people fall back into their comfort area, their happy emotions, those things. So because tropical is so prevalent in culture, it far, far, far outnumbers sidereal. Then I would say that people are comfortable there, and they just kind of go back to sleep, and it's fine.
You touched on something super important to me, which is, if I could like echo it back to you,
Sure.
that that in that time with tropical, you had a lot of positive and powerful experiences. That was meaningful, right? The discovery of it, learning the language of the 12 archetypes, it was powerful and meaningful. And tropical is like, still, I believe, close enough, and may always be close enough to the power in the actual skies and the power in actual reality, that the language of those archetypes, just like whether you look at it as like psychological archetypes or like explanations for behaviors, I don't know where you draw the line, but it works. There's power there. There's meaning there. It will help you if you learn the tropical system, because I did too. We had to start somewhere. I didn't hear about sidereal zones. Embarrassingly late in my own journey. I just not paid attention to Vedic astrology.
Right. Well,
but I think what you're pointing to is really important, because there is meaning and power and goodness in it.
Yeah, it's just a little twisted. I mean, you come across these, it's like any number of first adolescent experiences, let us just say, where you get this immediate association of the times you were living in, and the feelings that were around. And then, for me, discovering astrology, because I was raised around Southern Baptists, man, astrology might as well have been like a spinning platter on the middle finger of the horned one himself. So for me to access that, and it was like an act of rebellion. It was very much like, oh man, this is cool, and something that can be mine, and all that rebellious frisson, and it got associated with what? Tropical.
Briar, can you say the same? I'm just curious. And I like to push people's buttons, but could you say the same thing potentially about the planetary energies that you work with in like Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and everything? Would you say that's also possible?
Well, all right. Fair enough. Me getting into like capital O occultism also definitely represented crossing of the Rubicon, because it wasn't me going into a subject like astrology where my parents didn't like it or the church didn't like it. This was capital O occultism was something where it was like generally agreed upon in broader society, don't do this. So I would say yes, there was a certain energy, that a certain I don't know, feeling of rebellion, aliveness, exploration, newness, lots of good, happy dopamine, serotonins cruising around in my head when
good stuff.
So you're saying astrology is your gateway drug.
Astrology was my gateway drug, perhaps, or maybe Saturday morning cartoons too. Who knows? But yeah, for sure, getting into the Golden Dawn work was like, and it's constructed that way too. I mean, they're like the symbolism, the things, and the blah, and the robes, and the candles. Like, whoa, it's such a dramatic experience. And yeah, I would say that my associations with the Golden Dawn teachings, which includes planetary attributions, but not in the same way that perhaps you're applying them, and that's fine.
Sure.
Definitely has some happy biochemistry going on there. Yeah.
Okay. Just wondering.
Sorry, I said lots of
Those
words.
were all.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I think people find they find comfort in it. Like I was reading my horoscope when I was like 6, 7, 8, in the back of the TV guide.
Right.
It started with like the magazines and TV guide and all that crazy stuff. And it seemed like there was something magic about it. Like it was really cool. And it is a big business, right. Too. Yeah. We aren't
the basic
only ones
idea that we're connected to the world around us in some sort of like sacred pattern. That is powerful. That is like, there's not a simple word or concept that sums up the power of that idea. It will change your life.
Yeah, and the human spirit wants to connect with something bigger than itself. It's just natural. It's just a natural inclination. So, as humans, we've, got to find that thing, and we're looking for it. And, tropical just happened to be there. It's easy to learn, the way it's broken up. Sometimes it's not so easy, but it depends.
The internet makes it pretty easy.
Internet, well, yeah, now, but back in like the 90s, you had to struggle to find good books. I mean, I grew up in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if the library had it. So it was a small Catholic town. There wasn't anything cool in the library.
Yeah.
Library cards and microfiche. I remember it well.
The irony is in Genesis 1:14, which I actually just posted about this on Facebook. But I was looking through the Companion's Bible, which is really has all these annotations and notes and goes back to the old Hebraic and Greek and Aramaic, not the Sumerian, but it's that's there along the chain, and this goes back deep. And in Genesis 1:14, it says something like God made the lights in the sky, like the sun and the moon, I can quote this, for signs and for seasons. And in the notes, it says the word for signs, which is like hyphen OTH, is the word meaning of things to come. Of things to come, signs and seasons. So why are the sun and moon in the sky according to fucking Genesis 1? Excuse my friend.
Oh, we dropped the fuck bomb all day. You were
good. So excuse that, but honestly, it's in the first chapter that like the sun and moon are there, not just for seasons and shit, but actually to know about patterns of events, of things to come. So so that was an interesting sort of discovery this morning, because I just got my hands on that book. It's an exciting book. It's recommended by like Jordan Maxwell.
What is it again?
It's the Companion's Bible. Let me get, there's more information. It's who are you? Ethelbert Bullinger's Companion's Bible.
Okay.
Ethelbert Bullinger, spelled the way you might think if you were really good with names. 2 L's in Bullinger. I don't know. Should I put it in the chat? Is there a way
go for it.
Yeah,
because it's a pretty neat reference. I don't get into the Bible. I'm not like into Christian mythology, but let me put it. I'll put it here in the chat, and then I don't know how it's going to get from here, Abby, to like maybe out there on the stream.
Friar, can you manage that one?
What am I doing?
If something goes into the Zoom chat, can you pop it into the YouTube chat for anybody who wants it?
Oh,
well, and then we were talking.
Probably not, but we'll find out.
Okay.
We had been talking. Oh, sorry.
I'm using separate devices.
Yes, I know.
So
you're doing a fine job of all of it.
I can't copy pasta.
We were talking about magic and stuff last week, and it inspired me to start reading The Secret Doctrine by Helena Blavatsky. And anytime I'm feeling like I'm not getting it or can't flow, that's kind of been like my book to go to. And it just like reminded me, and it shocked me that like we aren't the only group of people that have been saying, hey, like they got it wrong, this isn't how it's supposed to be. And you know, here I'm reading her works, and she's, you know, littered it with a bunch of shit talking, like even calling people out by name. I was like, oh, I love this lady. And you know, she was already talking about how, you know, the Bible is actually talking about the planets, and she was very much into astrology, very much into you know, using sidereal and doing it like a lot as Vedic astrology. Like she did a lot more Vedic type astrology. But I just kind of thought it was funny. I'm like, oh, so we aren't the only ones. Like, you know, back in like 1800 and whatever the fuck, you know, they were already talking about it, telling people. And that's why they were starting their secret societies. You know, we have a secret. You know, this is what we're doing. And yeah, it's just repeating over and over again. We hit these groups, we do it, it putters out, and then another group comes up and we talk about sidereal, and oh my god, you guys figure this out. And it's still tropical, still something that people tend to turn to instead of like just looking up at the real sky.
Well, I have been trying to find other sidereal astrologers out there, potentially for, or like any I just don't think a lot of tropical, we talk a lot of smack here, so I don't think a lot of tropical astrologers want to jump on with us and have that conversation. Although we do have one, he's going to talk, he's coming on, I believe his name is Gary O'Toole, and he's going to be jumping on next month to talk a little bit about like unifying those two things. We'll, you know, see what he has to say. I don't know. Maybe he has like, you know, some good insight on how to do that. But anyways, I've been looking, and outside of Athen, outside of like him and like maybe one other person, there's not really, on YouTube anyways, there's not really a sidereal astrology presence, besides like some smaller creators, like, you know, less than 30,000 subs, right?
Tasio, for one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't even think she has that many.
No.
She's gonna come on too, by the way. So we have some Dr. Danny. She's another one jumping on. Yeah. Late next month. October's next month, right? It's September, October. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So anyways, but it was work trying to find people. Which I think it makes it more I think we're doing the Lord's work, you know. I think there's a need for more, and people that, you know, like Nikki said, like there's a fallback, and that's what it is. It's where we have the easy accesses in tropical. Well, we can probably do our part. I mean, we're doing something to make it a little bit bigger. I've personally beat this dead horse with every human being that I've encountered who has any interest for the last 15 years or so. Like, I don't know.
Here comes Abby again. Oh, God.
Well, I mean, they didn't seem really put out by the conversation, but most of the people, you know, happen to find you, you know, marketing and whatnot. But so hopefully it's getting a little bit better. And more of the people that I do encounter, people, it used to be that people would get readings with me and have no idea as soon as I like pull up a program or something. They don't know what they're looking at. They're like, why does it say my son's in Leo? I thought I was a Virgo.
Right.
So there's fewer and fewer of those people, which I think is a good sign. Some of the diehard tropical people, though, there's nothing you can do. They don't want to hear it, you know.
Oh, they'll fight about it, man.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Which I'm fine with. Like I welcome all of that.
That's fine.
Most people don't.
Oh, did you say that Crassia Tassia was going to be on the show?
Yeah, she's going to be on.
That's rad.
Yeah, I think she said next month.
She's your favorite fire.
I know. I'm excited.
And I love her accent.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes. So yeah. You guys, let's take a look at the sky. Speaking of, let's do it.
Okay.
All right, stand by. Briar, when you hear stand by, that's your cue. Like say, because I'm gonna be a minute while I shuffle screens or something. That's like your cue to jump in with something.
So hilariously, I'm eating breakfast,
Oh,
which
okay.
consists almost entirely of fruit and cheese because reasons. I just
Okay.
like it sometimes. Light
Well,
breakfast.
I do have to say tropical is big business. There is a really big business behind it. There's marketing, there's calendars, there's oh my God, you can buy little cards. There's just tons of stuff. So
Nikki,
to
I gotta tell you something.
make sidereal like popular, it's gonna take a big push.
When I was
Big
digging
dot.
around for potential people, I would like check
Yeah.
out their website first, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, this one lady, I don't remember her name, which is just as well, because I wouldn't tell you, but or at least not on
Oh, no.
here.
Oh no.
First article, first page, it's Virgo season, and I almost
The
lost it.
fuck up. I know, it's killing me. Well,
That-
here's the thing. I will pull strangers in my like that come in to the store, and I'll be like, I'll pull out my app and I'll show them exactly like just their sun. Like, this is where the sun was when you were. That's why. They'll be like, that's why. And they have this moment, and it's I don't know. I just think it's amazing. And I don't know why nobody wants to jump on top of that. Get on board. Like,
Clicks, gotta get your internet clout.
yeah, that too. I don't know. I couldn't relate. I couldn't relate to anything in my chart. The people around me, I'm reading like their charts. I'm looking everything up, and I'm like, I just didn't fit. Just doesn't fit. But
We have
I
a
don't know.
question in the chat.
Yeah, let's have it.
Teresa says, my son was in the process of converting me to sidereal. Unfortunately, he passed away suddenly in January.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I'm trying to study on my own now. Does astrophotography still work in sidereal?
Like taking pictures of the sky?
Astrocartography?
It was astrophotography.
It might have been autocorrect.
Oh, yeah, maybe so. I would assume yes, because really, you're just shifting stuff, 23 degrees to get back right with the actual stars. So I would imagine anything that works in tropical as some sort of system would probably work in sidereal, but that's
100%. Yeah.
Actually, there's no shift from astrocartography. It's because astrocartography. Let me take this back just a step. When you're looking up at the sky, you're trying to say, okay, this planet aligns with like that star group. So we use the zodiac. But when you're doing astrocartography, you're looking at the ground. So when you look at an astrocartography map, you're just looking at lines of where the planets are, and it's scientific. So in other words, it's all sidereal. So astrocartography doesn't change from tropical to sidereal. Astrocartography, like the idea of precession itself, is one of the sidereal concepts that tropical people just have to deal with. But what does change is the interpretation of the lines. So where someone in a tropical chart, the chart might read like, oh, your Jupiter's in Gemini. That's really weak. You want to avoid the Jupiter line. Let's say, where would that shift to? It'd be Taurus. So then now we have Jupiter in Taurus. That's great for wealth. Go to your Jupiter line. So people can interpret it differently based on a tropical or sidereal interpretation of the chart. They will interface with the map differently, but the map itself does not change. There's no such thing as tropical astrocartography.
Okay.
Thank you.
I didn't know that.
I do astrocartography, I'm happy to expound on that. Yeah, that was probably too much verbiage, but I hope
No, it's great.
Oh, no, that's awesome.
If Teresa did mean astro photography, then yes, it definitely works for that too. As a matter of fact,
she corrected and said yes, she meant cartography.
Okay. I figured it was autocorrecting.
But no, what were you going to say? Because that sounds exciting. Astrophotography.
Oh, just you can use Stellarium to like set up your camera and stuff if you're taking pictures of the night sky or your like all kinds of stuff. Like you can program it just straight through Stellarium. So that's pretty cool. All right. Well, on that note, as everybody can see here, let me double check my date. This is for the lat long I'm using is the Giza Plateau. And then I am looking at the date. That does look like today-ish. I think that's local time. I'm not 100% sure.
Do you
But
could I interject a quick question?
yeah,
Why do you use Giza?
it just makes more fun for people. I think it's
Okay.
yeah, like people can relate to it.
Do you have any familiarity with the work of Carl Monk?
Yes.
The code? Okay,
Yes.
okay, because he orients the entire geodetic grid, the whole energy field of Earth to like Giza's his 0, and from that point, like a whole bunch of stuff starts to make sense. That's very unique to his observations.
I mean, I can't prove anything one way or another. But
No,
I
no.
can't dispute that either. I think he has a pretty good finger on the pulse there. And
I agree, and I think the idea that his idea that the ancient world centered around Giza as like that would have been their prime meridian, or like where we see Greenwich Mean Time is like going through Greenwich because the British did all that violent stuff. Now, before all that, if there's a natural, he puts it at Giza. So I just thought that was real fascinating.
yeah, I'd agree with that. Well,
Yeah, I
Sun is-
watched the code. That was
sorry,
an
go ahead.
incredible video. Sorry.
Yeah, we were just
So
talking
go
about
ahead,
that last
Abby.
week too.
Yeah, we did. We were actually just talking about that. So
Yeah, cool.
Okay. I think there's a delay. Hopefully I'm not stepping on anyone. The sun is literally at the tail end here of Leo, and it's already, I mean, I would consider this already transiting into Virgo. I don't think it makes it Virgo season. I don't know that there is there is a Virgo season, technically, but it's not when everybody says it is. But we also had our conjunction with Regulus and Mercury not too long ago, and obviously Mercury is moving a little bit slower here through Leo, and Venus is approaching Spica. I think we talked about that last week too. Michael, we're definitely going to get your take on these things. The moon, at least right now, is right here under this little leg of Ophiuchus. That's going to change minute to minute, so we're not going to pay too much attention to that. Saturn is still going back and forth here in this void place between Aquarius and Pisces, so we're still getting a lot more of the same. I would also be interested to hear your take on that, but I'll come back to it. I'm just going to touch on these real quick, and then we'll jump in. As we can see, Mars is definitely making its way into Gemini, and Jupiter is still in the Hyades. So,
and the moon,
Michael, you gotta take
the moon right now.
Huh?
The moon right now is right on the tail of the Scorpion and the head of the Serpent Bear. Right, the moon is right in one of the more interesting degrees of the sky.
Agreed. This is a very intuitive place in my experience. So
yeah, it's a
pulling out
galactic
some
center there, and
deeper
all those
insights.
stars.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. I'll let you do
No, you're good. Anything in here interests you that you'd like to share with the world?
Is it a question for all of us?
Yeah, no, for you specifically.
Oh, for me, anything interests me. No, just what interests me right now is mostly, I love that the moon is in that like very questionable degree of the zodiac, very near the galactic center. Right as we start this, I just think that's auspicious. There's a lot of no man's land stuff happening. Like Pluto is out between Sag and Capricorn, Saturn's between Aquarius and Pisces, and yeah, Mars is just like not really into Gemini yet, very close to Orion's sort of club there. And that's kind of what I have on my screen. But yeah. So kind of into Gemini, but it just seems like a lot of like transitional and developing energy. I'll leave it there.
Oh, I was muted for a second. So in the Sumerian zodiac, the 18 constellation zodiac, these two figures were part of their system. This was the true shepherd of Anu, and up here, this was the crook, and it was basically either we could look at this a couple different ways, a representation of Demuzid, who was the consort of Venus, although he was very young and youthful, and there's definitely he was a vegetation god, and he died every year and that type of thing. But Venus said, or Inanna Ištar, she said that he was very wise and an exceptional lover, and they have a very graphic. So the Sumerians in particular had no qualms about writing very dirty poetry. So she was, very detailed in her depictions of Demuzid. Down here, this figure actually, this was Popsicle, and in some cases, this was the servant of Inanna. It was a female who was the servant of Inanna when she descends into the underworld. In the masculine form of Popsicle, he was more of like a king and a shepherd, very similar to the same type of energy we get up here. Now, I personally have found that this void portion of the sky tends to pull on people. So even I would say with Jupiter, so if I'm doing a natal chart, somebody who has their Jupiter or any planets over here, they're actually going to get pulled from all of these different directions. And I find that these people have a lot of natural creativity, a lot of empathic ability, but also some reluctant leadership traits where they don't necessarily want to be put out into the forefront and have to guide people, but they keep finding this repeated message like, oh, I'm, like I was the oldest of all my siblings, and I feel like I keep having to be responsible. And then like, they have to take on too much responsibility. And so sometimes they seem to shy away from that because it seems to be a very sensitive portion of the sky. Have you noticed anything along those lines, or what have been your observations about this part, would you say?
Oh, wow. Well, I think I know less about Auriga than, like mythologically or astrologically or anything. So I'll leave my comments on Auriga just like to some of the stars around it they seem fortunate, but that's all I can say. Like when things are connected to the stars of Auriga, especially Capella, it seems like generally positive. I really have to leave it there. But Orion is really interesting because it sits across the heavens from Ophiuchus. And in the Vedic sort of sidereal mythology, in the body of Vedic sidereal mythology, Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, was correlate to like the Shakti, the mysteries of the goddess, and the energy, the higher potency energy force, like the Kundali, or all the cultures have their names for it. But Orion across the sky was often depicted like as Shiva Nataraja, the dancing Shiva, who's the forearms kind of depict all the actions of kind of the actions of the divine. Shiva is a metaphor for consciousness. So in the Vedic, just for anyone who's listening who isn't familiar, especially those who might want to project their Christian overlay onto this idea about God. No, Shiva was what was looking out from behind the eyes. It's not, Shiva's not out there. Shiva's not to be worshipped or like it's just an understanding. But this Orion was like the heart of God consciousness in the sky. It was like the correlate, like constellation to like, it is just the masculine divine, you could say. So I wanted to sort of bring that into the conversation. I don't find that everyone universally connected to the stars of Orion is like, and honestly, Shiva was a bit of a mess anyway. If you look to that mythology, Shiva was a maniac. So we can just leave that there. I think when you get to regions of the sky where you have multiple forces pulling, you sort of always have a kind of like almost like a Plutonian effect where people get a little polarized or kind of two minds, and they have often in this part of the sky, I see the same as, and especially with the Capricorn Aquarius boundary, a sort of need for two truths about things. Like, on the one hand, it's like this, but on the other hand, there's this sort of like paradoxical other total truth, on the one hand, we all seek life and experience and evolution. And on the other hand, there's like a death urge. And those two truths like drive human experience. That's like a really extreme example. But I think this area of the sky is tough because you just have Gemini in and of itself is a kind of multifaceted influence. And so there's just so much going on here that people, like somebody born at this moment with Mars right there, that's not going to be easy, their journey to discover their Martian qualities, whether you just say like that's their courage, their bravery, their exploratory side, their impulse to take new steps and drive. That could just be a little like pulled in different directions, confused, conflicted. So I would agree really generally, but I can't correlate it to like, I don't get into mythology, any like one defining mythology. I try to just talk about kind of like, I just pull stuff in sometimes from various mythologies about the star groups, but I try to talk about where all the Venn diagram overlap is. So without getting too much into like what Gemini and Taurus might be to you know, different people's, they are really different. Gemini is really active and Taurus is more grounded, but yeah, I think that's the whole of my thoughts.
Okay. Nikki, you got a take on any of this?
Well, I mean, it's a really kind of, for me, I've seen it more as an electric kind of spot in the sky. You know, you have the kind of anti-galactic center right there. You have that silver gate. I'm still trying to understand that flow of energy. You have all of these like credible ideas in the, you know, galactic center. We got all this psychic energy. And this could be the area of the sky where we can find ourselves expressing a lot of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is like a full moon to the galactic center. So when a planet's here,
Yeah.
it's like they're in a full phase that's brilliant. I find it hard to understand this area of the sky too, like above and beyond other areas of the sky. This one is a real, that's a doozy.
Yeah, it's where my nodes are. It's awesome. It's really great.
So you have a node on the galactic center, like, and a node
Yeah,
on
my
the
south
sort of
node is
silver
on
gate.
the galactic center, and then my north node is on the silver gate, right in between, right there, right where Mars is. But yeah, I actually found the more Mars is moving into Gemini, the more kind of scattered my brain has been. You know, I haven't been able to keep my thoughts focused, stay grounded. Just my experience. I don't know if anybody else is having that at all.
We talked about that, I think maybe in one of the meditation calls. It's so hard to tell anymore, like what was the live stream, what was the meditation call, but
Yeah.
I have felt a bizarre sense of peace since Mars started moving into Gemini. Now, I'm usually pretty blissed out and pretty happy and peaceful, but I felt even more calm. I feel, now I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. I have not meditated in the traditional sense in probably a few months. Some of that just has to do with I've been researching a lot and I get in the zone and I'm just don't listen to my excuses, okay? Like I'm not a good example right now. But despite all that, I felt like I've been meditating. Like I have that feel like I don't know how to explain it. Like there's a feeling you get when you meditate regularly, and that's how I've been feeling. But I have noticed over like the last week, and that's when maybe a couple of weeks, just this bizarre sense of calm. I don't think I'm going to die anytime soon, but I've noticed it's that feeling, I've talked to a lot of people. Obviously I did psychic work for a really long time and talked to a lot of people who are going through some stuff and some family members dying and whatnot. And one of the things, I'm sure if any of you have been around someone dying, like that's one of the things that they talk about. Like people who are dying, they know they're leaving. At a certain point they accept it, and then they start to get like this weird sense of calm. I've been doing weird, what is that called, you guys? Not contingency stuff, but basically making preparations for like if you die, like what's going to happen to your stuff, like little stuff like that. And it's not that I really think I'm dying. I really don't. I'm pretty sure. I have nice palm lines. I have a sense, I've had the sense for a very long time that I'm going to be here for a while. So I'm not worried about that. But it's almost like the other stuff is so calm. I'm like, and everything feels handled for me. I'm like, well, what else can I do that needs doing? And like, that's the stuff that I come up with. Now I'm of the opinion, and you guys can jump in here and let me know what you think, that it really depends on where your Mars is placed in your chart. Interestingly enough, my Mars is back in Sagittarius. I'm trying to think, am I on the rump side or am I on the galactic center side? I think closer to the galactic center. I'm not 100% sure. So maybe some opposition in there. But like I said, traditionally, or maybe I didn't mention this, in Mesopotamia, and I have found this in my readings, that Gemini is an exceptionally empathic and emotionally sensitive constellation. I don't see the cognitive correlation that everybody picks up from the air element association, but you know, I can't say that, like, I'm sure there's something in there, right? But
there's relationships to writing with some of the stars, but I'm with you. It's not as mental as everyone makes it out to be, but it does go to a lot of language. There's a lot of language in Gemini, and I don't know if that's the same as. No, I don't suppose it is. But
are we
I
talking
think,
about communication?
yeah, you could be talking about communication. I think how you organize information and how you express it. Those are parts in Gemini I do see consistently as being like affecting the planets moving through. But it's not so much like if you've got. I mean, I have a Mars in. Well, I'm a bad example because I am sort of mental. But my Mars is connected to my Mercury, and I don't know. I see what you're saying, but I also, in my own work, I see a connection, especially between Castor and Pollux, and writing, and writing. That just kind of pops up, whether people have a book in them or they just love to read or information. And I think you're right in that there's something there, but I also think it's overblown. So I guess I'm agreeing wholesale with you. But
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting about the writing. It's not something I've looked for in Gemini, but it might be there. I don't know. You know, I have to look for it.
I think it is really sensitive. I think it gets sort of oversimplified. But again, like that's where people have to start with astrology, because all this stuff is like the complex around that star group is so nuanced. You know, you can't just be like, oh, this is about writing, or like whatever.
Right.
You know
I
this,
know.
and I know
Yeah,
this.
yeah. It's like the typical like Gemini likes to talk a lot, like it is a really mental spot in the sky. It's very empathic, like my son is a Gemini, and he like will stare a hole right through me and talk, and he needs that you know that reciprocation when it comes to connecting. And I think that that's really what Gemini is about, making those connections when they communicate. And that's how communication gets so blown up with it. Now, does he like to write? No, he likes to read, but he's definitely not a writer.
Well,
Interesting.
So, I mean, there's just, I guess, if maybe Mercury was there, it'd be a different story,
That's the
yeah,
thing. Charts holistically are one thing, and then
right,
isolating
right.
any kind of
Yeah, really difference between.
I wonder
you
if
go
some of
and-
the language that you were talking about, Michael, comes through. So I'm a writer. That's a massive, massive part of my life and my existence. I don't have any desire to write in isolation. Like, I write to share information with other people. I would imagine, outside of interpersonal connections, we have no need for language in the first place. So maybe that writing is an expression of some deeper desire to connect with each other. And so in which case,
that's profound. That's like mushroom thoughts. That's wild. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I do, but that's like almost like an archaic level of Gemini, where like, I don't know if
yeah, that's how I look at stuff, is from the caveman, like the caveman pointy talkie. That's how I do astrology. So that's where my brain goes.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yes.
Right. Well, what do you make of the twins as a theme through so much mythology? I mean, we don't need to, there's so many obvious examples, but even just the concept of like twin warriors or friendship or a connection, and like that to me is where I will see you on the like Gemini sensitive and feeling, because these are connections, these are heart bonds. It's always talking about soulmates or heart bonds or warrior brother or sister, some sort of companion on the path. That's not a mental concept. That is like brother from another mother stuff, or even like like
Yeah,
this is really deep. Yeah, so I feel that way, and I'm curious your thoughts. In the twins, just Do you see that in Gemini, the energy of split, or how do you interpret the twins as you'd like to say it?
Well, the way I like to explain this, so kind of to get past just so you guys know how I'm talking about it, to get past some of the isolating the planets and the constellations or any one point. I don't like to do that either for obvious reasons. The way I like to refer to it is somebody has a strong Gemini. Maybe it's on the ascendant, descendant. Maybe there's some planets in there, whatever's going on. So I'll just say a strong Gemini in the chart, as far as I have seen, they tend to make family members out of friends. And so I was in the military, and one of the things that you get right in basic training, you figure out very quickly that these people are your brothers and sisters. And it's a really strange thing. So even that's why soldiers who've never met each other, they see another soldier in uniform, they're like, we're on that same page. And that's what I get out of Gemini. And I think that archetype exists from Sumerian to Babylonian times, and obviously in through Greek, Castor and Pollux. And even I believe, where is the name is Yama, and his dog's over here too in Canis Minor. So in Hinduism, there's a concept. So guys, names, dates, not my best friends, but I believe it's Yama, who was the first mortal. And he was in love with she may have been his twin sister. I don't know, you guys. It's been a while since I've.
Early humanity gets incestuous in any mythology.
Yeah, okay. They were short on people, so whatever.
Short on people?
Yeah, so, according to...
They weren't as social, I guess.
Right. But his sister was really into him. He was not feeling it. But he gave in to, he's like, all right, you're my sister. And so he becomes mortal. He becomes the first mortal from this, and he's eventually killed. So he's like the first, person who becomes a human being and then eventually dies. And so they stuck him up there in the constellations next to with his dog down here in Canis Minor. Or no, his name means dog, and he's up there by Canis. I don't know. My mythologies, you guys, they all get mixed up. But the point I'm trying to make is, and I don't know, see, here's the problem. I am 100% not the expert when it comes to Hindu mythology, because there's a lot of it, and it changes throughout time. I mean, I got my hands full with the Mesopotamian stuff, so you guys out there are going to have to forgive me, but I don't think that's a coincidence. And I see these overlapping mythologies in the entire sky. They're definitely in there. So I don't think that's a coincidence. And like I said before, I don't get, when I dissected when I was trying to figure out why do all these signs do what they do or whatever, and I was dissecting everything, when I stripped away the element modality system, the classical, earth, air, fire, water, you get a much clearer picture of what's going on in here. And I really think
detriment and just awesome. Yes. Everybody, please do yourselves a favor.
Right. I really think that the actual myths paint that picture very well. And I think that some of that, superficial stuff, and what's some of the goofy stuff they say, Geminis like to party. They don't like to have deep connections. They're more about
that it's superficial.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say is that there is a little bit of a scattershot approach in Gemini, where if you go across the sky to Sagittarius, I do find that Sagittarius people tend to be more focused. If you're looking for water in Sagittarius, you just dig one hole the whole way down till you find water. In Gemini, I have seen, not invariably, but I have seen where people just kind of dig a lot of holes and then just kind of go on to something else, or jack of all trades kind of approach rather than a deeper commitment. But it isn't a personal superficiality, a lack of depth. It's not like Geminis are shallow. That's stupid. So I want to kind of tease that apart.
Do you want to tease it now, or is that you're just teasing?
No, I meant to say that I wanted to tease the idea that Geminis are superficial or shallow or stupid from the idea that Gemini has a little bit of a scattershot approach to problems, as opposed to a really focused, directed approach.
Okay. Friar, quiet over there. Got any insight to add?
Well, I'm looking at this dang thing on the screen here, and I see some dog Like he's messing around on the back of a damn unicorn. What in the hell? They need to be paying attention to that damn snake behind them. What in the world?
The
That's all
unicorn, the unicorn, I think is what 1700s is when the unicorn made it into the sky. So
Stop. Really?
yes, Canis.
They made it up.
Yes, Canis Minor. We're looking at Anubis, I believe. Some of the earliest mythology. Yes, my
What
brain's
was the
melting, I don't know.
Monoceros? What was the unicorn? Do you know?
I don't think it was
before?
anything. I don't think it was
wasn't
anything.
anything. So it's just not a strong group of stars. Not very impactful, huh? Yeah, I
There-
can see on my chart. There's not even any star of the constellation even listed as its own.
Yeah,
name.
I think it was used in like navigation, maybe in like the 1700s or something like that, and that's kind of where it popped up. I don't know for sure. Definitely don't quote
Hey,
me
no
on anything
worries.
at all, really.
There is a question in the chat, by the way.
Hear
A
it.
question in the chat. JT asks, what's the astro implications for markets in general?
Like for just now.
Yeah, presumably, what does the sky say about the current financial markets?
Markets globally or in a specific location?
Yes.
So all of the
Yes.
above. Michael, do you do any financial astrology? Would you like to touch on that? Or are you more like, no, only the deeper stuff? I don't really want to.
No. Most of what I do is more like psychological astrology, but I can take a look and just speak generally to that. Like we're just looking at today, right now, in the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn. Yeah, there's a waxing square between Jupiter and Saturn. And the last time Jupiter and Saturn got together was, I believe, in Capricorn. Or no. Honestly, that would have been 4. Yeah, that was the last time Jupiter and Saturn got together. Was around the time that the sort of like G8 or the big financial, the kind of voice to the people from on high, the mountain of financial, those decisions that affect us all.
Overlords. Yeah.
The overlords, if you will, the word came down from the financial overlords that in the future nobody would own anything. We'd go to more like a rental sort of system. And so the quote was like the one like buzzword to take away was like, nobody will own anything and we'll all be happy. So that sounds like a whole lot of bullshit, but that's nothing new under the sun. So what I see now that Jupiter and Saturn are squared, keep in mind, that was the conjunction. So think of it like a new moon, Jupiter and Saturn, a new moon of power, of financial power. And now Jupiter is making a waxing square. And at the point of a cycle, a phasal cycle going around and around from new moon to full moon to new moon, like this does around every 14 years. The Jupiter square to Saturn is like when you see the emergence of something. So what I would expect to see now is a kind of implementation of like a shifting towards, and I've noticed it in subtle ways, but I don't really pay attention to what the overlords say. It's kind of personal. So there's a lot there. I'll just leave that there. But I do think that I have seen things shifting towards this sort of like less ownership, like whether it's like the music I stream. One of my favorite artists just released an album and it's like, I cannot buy the MP3s. I cannot take possession of that music and put it on my player or my hard drive. I can only stream it. There's only various streaming platforms. Now that's just something from my life. You may have correlates, you may be noticing this, but that's about what time it is. Like if you're asking about markets in general on a worldwide scale, this, first of all, that's a little bit too complex to address. But when we're thinking about the fluctuation of markets, we're looking at Jupiter and Saturn, and we're looking a lot about eclipses. We're looking a lot at the eclipse cycles. And we have some of those coming up October 2nd and the full moon in a couple of days next week on September 17th will also be an eclipse. And I really don't follow the markets. I don't engage in speculation. I'm not into cryptocurrency. I would answer the question with just like, I would expect to see the kind of like more like milestone kind of rollouts, like policy changes or the introduction of things having to do with like 15 and then like even like the kind of like it's like a 20-year cycle, honestly. Jupiter and Saturn's a 20-year cycle, if I'm not mistaken. But that alone is a sign that I should put it down, because it's not my area of like specialty or expertise.
Yeah, it's good to draw
Saturn
a
in
bright line
Aquarius.
around the things that we know and we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, of course. With Saturn in Aquarius and Jupiter in Taurus, I would say I wouldn't be surprised to see new ways of addressing like economic. With Saturn in Aquarius, I would think that like new and futuristic ventures would be strong. A lot of people said when Uranus entered into Taurus that crypto would get the break it needed, that it would kind of like emerge or succeed. People have been kind of looking at some of these placements that we see currently and looking for like new financial systems, but I'm not sure I see that yet. So
Okay. Nikki, you got a take on that?
you're muted.
You're talking, your mouth is moving, but no sound's coming out.
Sorry, I'm in a shared space. No, I was looking at the future transits, and you know, we have this square for a while, and there's been a lot. I think Saturn's been, you know, the Saturn lessons. I mean, it's about building like connections and connecting with new people, and but we have that, you know, moving and conjoining with Neptune in the North Node. You know, and I'm kind of thinking that's gonna, you know, dissolve kind of these current orders and like what the structures that we have. And I'm just kind of curious what you two, Michael and Abby, what you guys think about that moving forward, Saturn pushing out of Aquarius when his retrograde
Shifting
ends.
from finances, and you're talking
Yeah.
about like social orders and like the societal structure.
Yeah.
Being affected by Neptune and the North Node. Yeah, that's not going to be easy.
Yeah, that
and I agree
seem
with
like
you.
that
I
would be
think
easy.
I think it will weaken. Neptune and Saturn have a very difficult relationship to resolve, in my experience. When they make contact in a natal chart, people usually lean one way or the other, but it's very hard to get those two like working together in one place. Like I myself have, well, and a very close inmundo square. It's not actually in the zodiacal aspects, but if you get into inmundo aspects, I have just a couple arc minutes, Neptune square Saturn. And I've always found it's like a kind of influence that makes for lazy people. And I've seen this in others too, but not bad lazy, good lazy. Like you want to get more out and you don't want to put a lot in. You want to set up systems that kind of like they're self-maintaining. They do themselves with very little input. You can get the output. So it's not about laziness. Henry Ford had
not harder.
Smarter, not harder. That's it.
Yeah.
Henry Ford had the opposition very close in his natal chart. So he popularized the assembly line, right? And that's one way of thinking about harsh Neptune Saturn contact. But when you have a conjunction with the North Node and in Pisces, I think the dominant energy becomes very Neptunian, very solvent, very distorting to power structures. And I think that I shy away from like dramatic or like doomsday type thinking, but I do see this coming down the line, and I know there are going to be systems that suffer from that influence. They're going to be Saturnian systems, constructs, organizations, orders, corporations, governments, groups. Someone is going to get their shit rearranged and handed back to them by Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node together.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of see that. And when you think about the financial markets, it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a financial astrologer. I'm not a finance guy, but it just kind of looks a little rough. Looks like it might be changing a little bit. But yeah, it hasn't, I don't know. I swear Bitcoin took a dive. All of that stuff took a dive recently.
It's intentional though.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got
Ooh, tell me what you know.
Okay. Well, first of all, when it comes to the markets, and this is the same, even doing like predictions for human beings, like we're talking about 8 billion people on the planet, right? So we have to grossly generalize. I mean, it really has to be said. And additionally, we have a sense in the West, we're speaking English right now. We're all, at least from people on this call, are from the United States. So we have a heavy Western bias, and we tend to look at the world from what's going on with America. And we don't see, you know, so like the economy here could be rocking. Okay. But like in South America, in Venezuela, and, you know, where Guatemala, wherever, like, they're dying in the streets. We don't know, you know. So some of that, again, you have to give a very, very broad prognosis unless you're looking at the transits in relation to a specific country, a particular cryptocurrency. I mean, there's ways to go about it to where you can get very detailed and specific, but if we're just looking at it very generally, Saturn, the last time it was transiting Aquarius, I believe, was like mid 90s-ish or early to mid 90s. That's when the internet really took off. Now, there was a transition period, which most of us Gen X or millennials remember, you know, who were around that during that period, where we were still a part of the old order. And we saw the transition into like the new order, but that new order didn't really take off until after that that transit of Saturn. I think something else is Neptune withstanding, because you may or may not know, Michael, but I have like a different take on some of the outer planets and stuff.
Oh, that's great. I'd love to get into that. But
well, I don't
right
see
now.
I don't see the negative stuff associated with Neptune whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I don't see negativity or positivity like inherent in anything. I think that it really just depends on what you want to do with it. And I'm assuming like you're on board with that. So
well, I mean, okay, I want to be careful with language here, because there's like a new age strain of thought that's like, it's kind of like, it's not negative, it's not positive, it's all good, man. And then I want to avoid like kind of, you know, magical thinking around anything. But I do want to say, when it comes to Neptune, I think we know the least about Neptune, and we have the least mythological in a Greco-Roman sense. We have the least angle to Neptune through mythology. Maybe Uranus we know less about that we could apply to a planet, but Neptune we know very little. I think we know very little about. And when I talk about the two of them having a difficult relationship, it's not because Neptune's bad or negative. I agree with you 100%. There's not, all the planets are energies without exception. They all have positive, they all have healing traits. They all have traits that could be detrimental in a certain, you know, it's like a balance where you have to sort of satisfy the balance, and everybody being wired differently. Some people are Neptune people. Neptune really works for them. And I'm not diminishing your experience by trying to tell you Neptune's bad. But what I find about Neptune is that it has a sort of a diffuse kind of, it acts like alcohol or just like a solvent. Like it really starts to wear Saturn's boundaries down. And I have seen in Pisces and with Neptune that what makes Saturn kind of strong isn't as exalted, or like, how would you say, it's not bolstered by that Pisces thing. So I think that is important to say this can happen, but it's not like, I'm not characterizing it as bad or this. When I say, oh, Saturn's going to get, turn sideways, and I may use like too strong language. And I'm glad that you bring it up, but I don't mean to characterize any planet is bad. Gosh, no.
Okay. You may not have. I was just paraphrasing, I guess.
Well, it's
I
common
heard-
to think in terms of like malefics, right? And we think, oh, this planet when it comes around is going to give these bad effects. And I throw that out with this,
Yeah, I'm
with
not
the
on board with all
exaltation and debility and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah, don't use that.
I think Nikki would agree with what you just said too.
Yeah, definitely. I started throwing that away. I'm like, what do you mean Jupiter doesn't work well here? Like, even right now with Venus in Virgo, like, I was like, wow, this is actually like a pretty good feeling. I don't get where she's a detriment there. And like, it just, I don't know. I threw those out a long time ago. And plus, I'm never going to remember that. Never going to remember that. This planet doesn't work well with this one. Why? They all live in the same house. Of course they get along.
No doubt,
you know?
no doubt. I don't mean to say, I always have to check myself for projection because like I said, I have a natal like square, which is, kind of, that's like a little bit harsher relationship. So how much of that am I projecting? How much of my ideas about the balance between Saturn and Neptune am I going to be projecting onto, well, everyone else and just the world in general? If, I have an idea like, oh, that's hard or that's difficult or that's a janky sort of relationship. And on the other hand, that has been my experience. So I have to sort of like tease apart what's true in that and what's, specific kind of relative to me. And I think it's always good to push back on overgeneralizations.
I would agree with that. Yeah. As long as we're talking about Neptune, I don't think I can explain any of this without visual aids. Me and Nikki just had this conversation last week. I was showing her how long story short, I was just testing stuff out to see what worked with the outer planets. Because basically, and Michael, I'm sure you know, and maybe some of our people out there, I don't know who's in the chat. Sorry, we're chatting a lot. We're not addressing any questions, if there even are any. But what happens when somebody discovers a planet, if they gave it a name for mythology, it just got plastered with whatever that random mythology was. So instead of Neptune, they'd have named it Hades. It would have gotten all the death associations, or they named it narcissist. It would be all about narcissism. So like we can't, I think we have to scrap the name in the mythology of the outer planets right out of the gate. I don't think that's.
I think it's very feminine too. I don't think it's like Poseidon, who was like a rapey ocean god. I mean, they were all rapey, but it just makes no sense.
Right.
But Neptune is a very feminine figure. It's very different to the mythology of Poseidon in important ways, and I think that's worthless. I think it's one of the most kind of misguided correlations in astrology.
Yes. I'd say the Capricorn, current meanings of Capricorn are really depressing and have nothing to do with, but that's a different topic. But let me wrap this up.
I got my Capricorn here. What's it say? Curious and anxious. Check it out. I'm curious and anxious.
Okay. Does that stick? Is that you?
No, I'm a Capricorn. I'm a Capricorn moon. I'm curious. I'm always curious, but anxious. It's not my A game. I don't like anxiety, and I don't find it to indwell in Capricorn. But I think Capricorn is the hardest stars to understand. I think a sea goat is not something people are prepared to embrace, and I think the archetype of Saturn, whether you look at Satan in the tarot or Sitchin from Egyptian, has always been demonized, and I think it's nonsense. I think a sea goat is very beautiful and indicative of change and transformation, which we don't give Saturn any credit for. We say those are stubborn stars. Capricorn, we say those are fixed and set. Those people are, and no, Capricorn is probably, between Neptune as an interpretation and Capricorn as just the general archetype. I don't know which is more confused, but I'm with you. Those two are like, I don't know if anyone really has like an explanation out there that really hits that I would say.
Yeah, Michael, I got it for you. I got it all.
You got, well, hit me. I'm sorry
I got it
for
all
talking
for you.
so much.
Well, no, please do. So I'll tell you about,
encourage me.
I'll tell you what's going on with Capricorn here in a second.
Yeah.
Do you know, is your moon on the fish or the goat side of Capricorn?
Fish.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
Hold on. I speak
Not
too
sure
fast.
now.
No, I know. It's on the goat. It's my moon's like a
Okay.
Sag Cap. My moon's like a Sag Cap cusp. It's just into Capricorn.
Ah, okay. Okay. That's a confusing spot. Not super bad, but I'll give you my take on it here. But
Please.
basically what happened, what I found, if I had to, and because I have to communicate this to people with like no knowledge of astrology or mythology or anything, what I have found is that Neptune is very much like Enki energy, and in Mesopotamia that would have been Aquarius. So I easily see the association between Neptune and Aquarius. So what I would say now, generally, you said you had your Saturn was square with Neptune, correct?
That's an inmundo aspect.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
like, yeah, that's a different system of defining.
I gotcha.
They do pop up, but I have my Saturn is on my descendant and my Neptune is on my midheaven. So because they're angular, when you do inmundo, it just evens to a square.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the way I would interpret that, if Neptune's on your midheaven, I would tell you that the height of your career, your societal purpose is all about stepping into the wise tribal elder, becoming the innovator, just like Enki was. So he was he was one of the major gods in Mesopotamia. He was the lord of the fresh waters, the fertile subterranean freshwater realm.
And he was the brother of Enlil, right? He was like a main character.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
But he was also, he held all the gifts of civilization, or the divine powers. He was a master of knowledge and wisdom, technology, the sciences. He gave humanity all of that. So a strong Aquarius, or
he was the one who was with humanity, right? He was like sneaking away to sneak humanity the blueprints and stuff, right?
Yes, he's the one who saved the Astrahasis or Utnapishtim from the flood. He told them how to build the ark.
Sure. The Noah. Okay, thank you.
Yes. So so if we equate that to Neptune, then your Neptune being at the highest point of the sky at the time you're born, it speaks to like what you came here to do and how you fulfill that purpose. Now, if you have a square with one of those, I see squares as going to the gym. Some people love going to the gym. They love pushing themselves and those challenges. Other people, other people avoid that like the plague, right? They'd rather sit home and eat Twinkies or Doritos or whatever. Sometimes I see that as like, yes, lean into this, and this will bring you what you came here to do. This will help you do it. It's not going to be easy getting started. It'll probably be a little bit challenging, but that's the type of challenge that you actually want to go for, as opposed to some people just pushing themselves nonstop. That's not, swimming upstream is not necessarily the way to go either. When it comes, so I would say the way and this kind of loops back to talking about the financial markets, although again, it's really hard to do just based on the standard stuff, because we don't know what we're looking at. We need more specifics, right? I do think that the Neptune, I think something's happening with Neptune in Pisces. I think that this is allowing us to, there's clearly all over the world issues with censorship. People are trying to shut down communication. This is forcing people to create these more innovative methods of communication, where also it's forcing us to start. So we went through with technology, especially with COVID, we all really got separated. But people are trying to reconnect, and it's forcing us to do this. And once, they start shutting everybody down on social media or their websites or whatever, they start forcing the communication down. That's only going to force people to push a little bit harder. And I think Neptune's entire transit through Pisces, and that's obviously going to be a really long time, speaks to this revolution in communication, in technology to an extent. I do see Neptune as a technological planet. Again, I'm doing this based on Aquarius.
It's very interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that. I've never heard that take in my life.
I don't know anybody else who says that either.
That's interesting.
As far as Saturn's obviously moving a little bit slower. But I do think we're going to see something similar when Saturn finally does get into Pisces. The same thing we saw in like the early 2000s, where the nature of civilization is changing, and I mean, we get our Saturn transits are like every 30 years. So we get some sort of shift like that. It's not always something massive, However, I do think Neptune's presence here is probably going to make it a little bit more noticeable. That's just, you know, my take on things. In that process, currencies are going to crash. You know, markets are going to have their ups and downs, and I think it's too volatile of a time to do any which thing. I am a huge supporter of Bitcoin. I survive sanctions because of Bitcoin, so like I'm a huge fan just based on that. I think a decentralized currency is probably good. Which is why they're trying to shut it down. But as they're collapsing it and shutting it down and you know, trying to lower the price, they're also, you know, BlackRock is buying up as much as they can. Like all these people who are shitting on it, for lack of a better term, are also going and turning around and they're buying it up.
Oh,
So
sure.
I would also factor that in for anybody who's interested. Now going back to Capricorn, okay, where were we over here? I was already there and then I lost it. Okay, so in Mesopotamia, this was Tashmetu, and she was a birth goddess. But as time went on, she was credited with like just wellness and happiness and blessings in general. Now, the goat symbolism in Mesopotamia, you know, goats were a huge part of their life. I mean, they still are all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
They produce food and milk and they're sweet little animals.
And cheese,
Yeah. They're not this stubborn. So I had dairy goats. And I've been like I lived on a farm for much of my life. I've been around.
Goats aren't stubborn. They're mischievous. They're mischievous.
They're playful. They're playful. They're sweet. They're intelligent. They're actually more like
they're
puppies.
Intelligent.
Yes. They don't feel like a puppy, and
they have
they're harder to snuggle with.
They have those cool sideways eyes.
Yes, they do.
I love goats.
So this was there were two different figures, but basically Tashmetu, she was synonymous with the wife of Nergal, who was pictured over here in Sagittarius. So we do have a connection. There is an overlap with Capricorn and Sagittarius. So if you're in the middle of the constellation, you're going to overlap with both of those. But this becomes much more of a, well, let me talk about the fish side. So obviously the fish was associated both with the fish of Pisces and Aquarius, because this was Enki and fish were some of his sacred animals. We have a lot of watery goddesses and obviously like regular deities, but Enki was very benevolent, not like the, you know, the creepy Neptune version. Same thing over here. We have Venus associations with Pisces. There's also some Mercury, and Mercury had an association. Mercury in Mesopotamia was a water planet. It was associated with creativity and storms and fertility and all kinds of stuff. So anyways, with the fish side of Pisces, we get the overlap with the Aquarius energy and Pisces. So it becomes much more intuitive, spiritual, and all of those things. So in my experience, Capricorn does become the most selfless, devoted, and generous of all the constellations. It's very, there is an element of loyalty there, but almost always a strong Capricorn is going to result in somebody being a healer. Now, how you heal, that's you have to, you know, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Sometimes it's pure medical field, especially if you have something going on in this side of Ophiuchus, that seems to kind of be the thing. But worst case scenario, you're healing through your art, you're healing through your communications, through your, sometimes it can be more affectionate and touchy-feely. I don't see any of that. This is like one of my biggest pet peeves and like frustrations just with the classical astrology in general is the random association of Saturn to Capricorn, and Saturn in like a really lame way. So Saturn in Mesopotamia was not dark and negative. I mean, he was an inert dog.
Right. Like Shawnee, it's not a devil. It's not the bad guy.
Right.
No, I'm missing the point.
So yeah, so if your moon's over there in Capricorn, what I would tell you is if you're looking, so if the moon was Inanna and I looked to him in Mesopotamia, we would look to him to tell you like what do you need to be doing to have everything in your life come together, like personally, professionally, spiritually, financially, whatever. I would tell you that Capricorn, if that's where it's at, or even a little bit on the overlap, I would tell you like you need to, everything in your life needs to revolve around stepping into that healing role. Again, how you do that. It's up to you. You have a lot of different options. But that has been my experience 100% of the time. So
yeah, that's really brilliant. I am in a little position where I don't like, because of the unusual condition of Saturn in my chart, which is right on a major angle, the descendant, and it's also right on Regulus, like just very, very close. So it has a little bit of more emphasis in my chart than it would in most people's chart. I guess I'm like a Saturn person, and for that reason, I'm never quite sure whether I'm seeing like the influence of Regulus, which is like a more exalted influence. It will bring out the higher angles of whatever it's touching, but I'm never sure when it comes to Saturn or Capricorn, and that's because Saturn is very unusually placed. It's very unusually strong in my own chart. Do you think, Abby or Nikki or Fryer, that what are anyone's thoughts on whether Saturn and Capricorn or Neptune and Pisces are even legitimate associations at all, or if we're just making that up as we go along to fit things into some kind of delusional, platonic, perfect
You mean as
model?
rulers?
Yeah, as rulers are associated to planets. Yeah. Do you think Saturn is Capricorns?
No, there's a connection through, like I said, that the spouse, these two right here were basically spouses.
Yeah.
Saturn being Ninurta, and this being Ninurta's constellation, I guess we could see like
Yeah.
that's him right in his home. I think they work well together, but I see Saturn as more of like a career planet, similar maybe to the sun.
Yeah,
and
how to
so-
find what's in you and bring it to others. It's like an integrity thing. Like how do you there? Yeah, Saturn has those career qualities. But then there's the Saturnalia in Old Roman. Like they, before it got totally just turned under into something else, there was like debauched Saturnian celebrations of like life
The good
force and
stuff.
fertility, the good stuff. Yeah. So it's, for me, Capricorn and Saturn, I don't know where else Saturn belongs in the stars. And I tend to think, this is a total tangent, but I tend to think that as a solar system, like as the universe formed, and like I understand, I'm already out on a tree I'm on a limb with a saw.
Yeah, we like that though. That's
Okay,
good.
right. I can appreciate that as long as I can recognize, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Sure, I'll continue. But as the universe formed, I tend to think that, like, in swirling in, like, these fast moving kind of what we theorize as like superheated swirling clouds of just like plasma and gases and just the cosmic soup, that as things started to congeal, that there might actually be some sort of sense of the sacred when it comes to like alignments. I hate the concept of rulership. I find that a little bit colonial, but I will say I do see a lot of correlations, not necessarily the classic ones. I'm not saying that the old map works, but I see enough in it that I wonder, like, well, if Saturn stands apart as like not having an associated star group, like where does that leave him? Because it kind of seems like the others have more clear associations. So that is like my thinking as it is now. I'm always open to changing my thinking when I'm introduced to new ideas. And Abby, you sort of broker in new ideas. You just, through getting into the Sumerian and connecting to you in your world, I've come into a lot of new ideas. So I'm not putting that forward as like, no, here's how it is. I'm saying, here's my thinking presently. It's like how it's evolved around planets and stars. And like, I'll just put that out there. What do you think of that? Do you think that's even how shit works? Like, do you think there are star planet correlations, or is that just not something you like take?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Venus and Regulus.
Venus and Regulus. Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
but that's not a classic association, but don't
Absolutely
they get along
not.
so well? Oh, they get along well.
Yeah, that's her.
She's never happier than when she's on Regulus. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that is her.
Yeah.
In Sumerian, like, can you say more?
Yes.
Pretend I know nothing.
Absolutely. So, the entire constellation of Leo was a representation of Inanna in the Sumerian period, or Ishtar in the Babylonian. Now, there's
Leo
also
was Ishtar's.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
She was called the Lioness of Heaven.
That makes a
And
lot of sense.
this relates to, there are some theories, I believe Dr. Robert Schoch's on board with this too, if I'm not mistaken, that the Sphinx was originally a lioness. Nikki was on board with that. She said when she was little,
Yeah.
that was what she saw. She's like, I don't
The
understand
Sphinx
it.
was a lioness, like
It was
like
a
a
lion.
Greek style Sphinx, or like what makes a lioness? Like lack of mane? Like are we talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
breasts
So
out, lack of
yeah,
mane?
yeah.
Like
So
what's
none of the fur, the fluffy mane and whatnot.
Mm,
And so
hmm.
there's also some of the depictions of Durga do have her riding a lion, which doesn't make as much sense as her riding a tiger, but I think we're still looking at goddess
Now
energy
Durga
on the
rides
big
a
cat
lion. Durga rides a lion. It doesn't
or a
matter whether
tiger.
it makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. But
So
more commonly, I think the very classic association with Durga, the first thing you learn, it is a lion. I get that.
yeah, so either way, badass goddess riding the lion figure, there's a big cat connection. There is so all of the gods in Mesopotamia, well, not all of them, but like the major ones, some of them, they had like their major stars. Now, some of them weren't in the ecliptic at all, so we can't necessarily
Oh, cool.
speak to them, like how they're interacting. But the king star, which would have been like the queen star, would have been in here. Now, in Babylon, by that time, they did call it the king star. But that was more just like the nomenclature's changing and stuff. And they're just copying down their stuff as they get it. But
So
she,
even back in Babylon, it was associated with rulership, the king's star.
we don't want to
Is
get
that literal?
locked into that concept
No,
of
but that's
rulership. There's an association.
Yeah,
There is, and
there
there's, and we see that through, they like to speak in code. They're speaking about like these different epithets and whatnot. But the lion, so in the Sumerian word, the old version was lioness. They actually called it, later they called it Urgula, but before that it was Urmach. And so like it was a female term. It wasn't until later that it became more masculine.
Right.
We can also see if we don't really need to go down that road, but into Babylonian times, we start to see less importance put on like the divine feminine and stuff, but whatever, it's fine. I'm not nitpicking.
Can I get a quick side question in?
Yeah.
It should be an easy answer. Did they associate anything with the sun? Like
Yes, this was Shamash. You mean as far as the constellations or the specific stars?
Yeah, like a star group. Did they recognize that the sun was a star in its own right? Like how were they? Because if Leo, which we are all taught today, Leo belongs to the sun. If Leo is actually of the nature of Venus, Ishtar.
Yes, this is.
Did they recognize other stars as being the suns? That's the question.
Yes, that would have been Libra.
Libra. So they switched it up, huh?
So basically what happened, yes. Leo, just so you know, Leo also has Mars traits. There's three different things going on here. From the lion's mane, we see rays of light, but again, this would have been a later association, so we can't really take the solar, if we're going all the way back to Sumerian times, the solar connotation is kind of minor. Now, we do have an association with Nergal, who was embodied in the planet Mars, and he was the god of war, death, pestilence, and the underworld. He sometimes was depicted with a lion's mane or like scraggly claws. He had a lion-headed mace, but again, his connection to the lion is minor compared to Inanna Venus. This was not only did she ride this, but again, she was ride it into battle. It was like her totem animal. But she was called the Lioness of Heaven. It was not. They were telling you everything that we needed to know about
she was called like Inanna. The name for Inanna was the Lioness of Heaven. Like
yes, absolutely.
They just let you know. Okay,
yeah, they were. It was pretty on the nose.
Sure, cool.
What was it? But what were we? Oh, but Libra. So here's the thing. If you look up the meaning of the sun in Mesopotamia and Babylon, it was Shamash, Utu in Sumer, but they're going to tell you he was the god of law and justice. And namely, this is because in the later periods, that's like the kings would be like, oh, thank you, Shamash, for, enacting justice on our enemies or whatever. But if you actually read about him in Sumerian mythology, he's the twin brother of Venus, and he's always trying to hook her up. He helped her pick out her husband. He's bringing her presents. He's talking her off a ledge when she's trying to go on like a, crazy female rampage, which they were clearly afraid of back then based on their
So
writings.
Shamash is the Venus, is Shamash is the twin brother of Venus?
Yes.
Okay.
The Sumerians said that the sun and Venus, because they were always really close together and they're both, very brilliant and stuff, they looked at them like twins. And so he was the twin brother and she was the twin sister. But they were the children of the moon god. So,
Cool.
where was I going with that though? I had a point. I think.
Libra, the sun.
Yes. So in the Libra associations, we do get some, because of the clause in the financial and also some of the later scale associations, like it's not a balance thing. We're doing weights and measures so we can evaluate something's worth. It had nothing to do with like balancing. It was all about discernment. You get an association. I think it's a rather weak association between the sun, also on some level Saturn with Libra. But it's not quite as on the nose as like the Venus Leo associations.
So I have another side question.
Yeah.
This isn't a side question. No, this is more direct. When we think about Libra today, we think about the scales, and it's different from Scorpio. But to the Arabic astronomers, it was never different from Scorpio. It was always
Agreed.
the claws of the scorpion.
Yeah.
And then you're saying going back to Babylon and further back to Sumer, that we can say that Scorpio was understood as one thing and Libra was like another. Were they both Shamashes, or like how do we conceptualize Libra as related to Scorpio in the ancient world?
It was one giant scorpion. The claws of the scorpion, again, we look at if you're gonna do some analysis, some weight measure and evaluate something's worth, what are we doing? We're picking it apart. Same thing we're doing with the scorpion. It's scorpion's claws. That's what scorpion's claws are for. We're picking our prey apart. We are finding food. We're building our little shelters or whatever the scorpion's doing with it. Can be like defensive. I look at it like a whole scorpion. I wish I could draw a picture on here. I mean, Stellarium does have the images, but I mean they're also, I found some of the Stellarium's version to be inaccurate, but that's like a whole different conversation.
and some of those images are a little ratchet. Like the main images, they did such a nice job on, but then some of the others are like, oh, you do have millipin imagery. How interesting. And the scales are there. Well, that makes me wonder where the Egyptian understanding fits in. And I guess I can kind of see like the scales of Ma'at and like the association with Scorpio and death and like the afterlife journey towards the galactic center. I guess that does. Okay, I don't need to answer. I sort of answered my own question in the constructing of it.
I believe in Egypt, this portion of the sky, it was actually like the lower part of Virgo. Had an association with a goddess who I can't remember which one it was because again, mythology's all jumbled up in my brain. She too had a connection to scorpions, but the ability to in the gut, in these the ability to like deal with poisons and toxins and eliminate like the organs of elimination. There was definitely a connection there too. I think we can see a little bit of overlap with the discernment and trying to purify something and get rid of the the stuff that we don't want to keep the stuff that we do. Mix in here with Libra too, but I mean I could totally be projecting.
And I was sort of thinking, well, how, because I was just sort of wondering how to reconcile that idea of like scorpion's claws with scales. But if we think about this sort of like judgment of, I don't know, judgment in like a more grand sense, I could see the ominous sort of scorpion's claws as being, correlate to that sort of afterlife journey and part of that mythology. The Egyptians loved that stuff. They focused more on that stuff, I think, than other cultures. But whatever, we all.
Yeah, they were definitely a little obsessed about it. It is interesting though. So the entire scorpion was, so the the Mesopotamians, they saw the constellations as literal signs. They thought they were literally messages from the gods, specifically to give us information about what's going on in the world. But they saw this as an image of a goddess known as Ishtar. They called her Ishtar of the ocean. She was the wife of one of the overlapping figures up here known as Zababa. But she was basically just another aspect of Venus. So I do see, I can see a Venus connection in Libra. I think me and Nikki were talking about this before a few weeks ago. She's like, yeah, I'm not feeling the Venus in Libra, but I can definitely see it in there.
Mhm.
I can see the planets in any of the constellations. I think they just have their different interactions.
Sure.
But the Scorpions themselves in Mesopotamia, they were respected as little warriors, but also they were used in all different types of healing in magical rituals.
Mhm.
So they were very maternal. Like this Scorpio is another mother goddess energy. I do think there's some more of the underworld connection there. And we see some of that. So anytime we have the snake deities, if this would have been Nira, possibly a Ningish Zeta association, but basically one of their Mesopotamian snake deities, they were all like associated with the underworld, healing, regeneration. We get the overlap in Scorpio
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation. Did you guys?
No, I'm just absorbing it. I'm just taking it in. Like, it's incredible. So I love to hear you talk. I love to hear you talk about it. No, it wasn't Venus that I just couldn't imagine switching Mercury and Venus around with Virgo and and Libra. It was the conversation we were talking about rulerships, and Mercury, really ruled Virgo. If Venus feels so good there. We were talking about that. But no, I like Venus as ruler of Libra. I was saying that it was like the masculine Venus, the Venus that wears a beard. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, I can see that. Fry, are you live over
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
10 points shall be taken from all of your houses for blaspheming the Dark Lord.
There we go, Professor Snape. Glad he made it.
Yes.
Did
No,
we have anything in the chat or anything?
No, we have resolved all chat questions. So
Okay,
everyone knows everything now.
I gotcha.
All the things.
Okay.
So Abby, I'm wondering, like, what do you think happened from here to there? We've got so many different goddesses that are the same one that they're talking about. I mean, in Greek mythology of Apollo and Artemis. Artemis is basically Isis, and what do you think happened? I mean, obviously civilization happened, things changed. They'd been watching the sky, but I mean, how far off? I mean, have we gotten from ancient times? It's been kind of insane, the difference, between the original meanings. Like the basic blanket meanings are there.
Sometimes.
I'm just curious. Yeah, sometimes.
I mean, first of all, it went through stages. So like after the advent of Christianity, we see the Virgin take on like the Virgin Mary traits and so. So I mean, there's like obvious ones like that. Right. First of all, I would like to say that there is, and I'm not going to quote it because I couldn't without just totally butchering it. But in the Epic of Creation, right at the end, when Marduk is becoming the supreme deity in Babylon, there's a quote where he basically says, even though we're gonna worship the gods, or you're gonna worship the gods like they're all different gods, but they're really all the same God. They're all just one. That's not you won't hear that from most Mesopotamian scholars because they're they like to pick and choose. They have their things, but it's in there and it's obvious for anybody to read.
Well, monotheism is a bit of a loaded. That's a loaded topic. I can understand people.
Yeah, sure. But when you look at the Sumerian versions, I mean, they were, even though they don't call them, even though they don't address it like Hinduism does, where we have all these different avatars, but they're all just the same God. That's basically what's going on. And because Venus was the main, I mean, she wasn't the first female, She was the biggest one, and she was worshipped. She's why we have the concept of the Whore of Babylon, because the Jews were so put off by this just, rampant goddess worship, that they spoke very disparagingly of Ishtar and everything. But
Right.
I suspect that if you went far enough back, you'd see more of the overlap between all of the gods. And at least in Mesopotamia, they try to demonstrate the relationship between all of these. They don't get super hung up on who for sure this was. Like, yeah, Sagittarius was Nergal, but he was also Pablo-sang, but they were really the same god, but they had like their own things. So they didn't get super hung up on that stuff. I don't think we should either, but I think it was a process, to answer your question, Nikki.
Yeah. No, the mythology is very interesting. I love when you talk about ancient mythology, Abby.
Thanks, Nikki. I appreciate that.
Abby, this goes to a question I've had that I hope is appropriate for you. I'm going to kind of drop a name. I was really hesitant to drop. I'm not a fan.
Okay.
But so many people have what they believe is an understanding of Sumerian cylinder seal knowledge through Zecharia Sitchin. And my question for you is not about the veracity of Sitchin, what he left in, left out is his. Whatever. Like everyone else in the world, I take him with a huge grain of salt. Like grain of salt the size of my fucking head. But he writes convincingly, I'll say, that the story of the Tower of Babel in the Babylonian telling of it is a very different story than this kind of biblical Tower of Babel story. And the story he tells, and just for everyone's edification, just so we're all on the same page and know what the hell I'm talking about. The story Sitchin tells us that humans were trying to build a tower, but the top of it would reach the heavens because it was some sort of landing pad for spacecraft to take off.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was Enki who had like broken from the circle, the council of gods, and like come down and sort of like secreted the humans these plans for space travel craft and so on. And then resultant of that, and here's where this gets interesting to me, resultant of that, the council of gods was like, oh hell no, and we have to destroy the mother tongue, and we have to magically fiddle with their language, and we have to divide language. So now no more mother tongue, and we all have a sort of like cultural inheritance of language. Now I get a lot more questions than answers on all that, and it's really problematic. But I just want to say, to the confusion, generally speaking, around mythology, astronomy, astrology, and everything, again, generally speaking, how much, like, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the relevance of that, or even
specifically about the Tower of Babel?
Well, as I relate it, like, let's say that's not something I'm like subscribing to. I co-sign Zecharia Sitchin here. But what are your thoughts on that stream of ideas? Because I'd say it's a popular stream of ideas. Maybe he popularized it, but I've heard it out there. Like Randall Carlson, Joe Rogan, all these, Göbekli Tepe guys, they'll bring this stuff up. And so it's out there. The ideas are out there. So I want to address it from your point of view, being a Sumerian scholar.
Well, I don't think I qualify as a scholar, but
that's okay. I know. I use the word lovingly and loosely, but thanks for
So here's the thing with Zecharia Sitchin. I'm gonna not specifically to that story, but just generally how he's communicating, why this is kind of, maybe not why it's made its way into pop culture. I mean, we can see that evolution. He's a great writer. I mean, the 12th Planet is awesome. Like it's fun to listen to or read.
Epic. It's totally epic.
Great. His ability to take actual texts and bullshit his way through though. Like that's
Yeah.
where both the great
Yeah.
part of it comes in and the problematic part comes in. He cites no sources. Well, sometimes that's not true. Once in a while he throws a tablet name out there so you can go and look it up, but very, very rarely.
Yeah.
So it makes it next to impossible for anybody to who doesn't speak Sumerian or isn't an Assyriologist or something to go in and check it out. The thing is, some of the stuff he says makes a lot of sense. So when he's talking about, and I'm 100% on board with this one thing because we have multiple myths to back it up. In the Epic of Creation, when he talks about the battle with Tiamat, I 100 wholeheartedly, I fully am on board. Okay, I'm perfectly sold with the idea that they're discussing the planets moving in the heavens, like coming out of their orbits, namely because well, this is like a whole conversation on its own. But the Mesopotamians and pretty much every other ancient culture that we talk about, they talk about these things. The gods are warring in the heavens and they're throwing thunderbolts. And some people are like, oh, the UFOs are
catastrophe. Yeah.
Yes, but there's also like a lot of these same cultures saw the planets as these same gods that they're talking about warring. So there is some evidence of, obviously Velikovsky puts a lot of that stuff out. There's the Thunderbolts Project, the Electric Universe people, like they have tons of evidence on all this stuff too.
I like them, yeah, and I'm more inclined to co-sign Velikovsky as my take as seems to be at present than I am Sitchin. But I'm glad to hear your take that he's not just some kind of institutional shill. Is like just
who Sitchin? Or well, the thing with Sitchin is, I believe he. I don't know for sure. I do believe he spoke Hebrew. I think he like very well. He did not speak Sumerian. He didn't know like basic words. Now I've tried, like I'm sure everybody else who either wants to agree with or debunk his work, to try to like pigeonhole some of his interpretations of the words, but they don't make sense. And to
I've heard really, really compelling points of view that even his basic, like some of the words that he used to establish his basic ideas, like the Dingir meant shiny craft, is like, that's fucking bullshit. Like I've heard
it doesn't even a little bit. It doesn't even a little bit.
Yeah, not even a little bit. Like you made that up, Zecharia Sitchin.
He 100% did. Yeah. So, but some of the stuff he talks about is legit. He just, has some, I just don't think that they're talking about aliens and spaceships. Now, I personally think that there's a very good chance that our DNA was influenced at some point in the past. I don't see why not. They can't explain all of our quote unquote junk DNA, so why not? But what I really think happened is that, so like the name Enki means Lord of the Earth. Okay. He's clearly, even in Sumerian times, an archetypal figure. Was there ever a guy named Enki 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 years ago? Probably not. Was there, some pretty smart people somewhere that like had some ancient technology and they passed down their knowledge, and maybe they were the ones who manipulated people and their DNA? Maybe, but I don't think it was the Sumerians. His time frames, as well as Velikovsky, they were way off when it came to like their 3,600 year cycles. There's a lot, many.
There's too much to unpack with a couple minutes left in the call. Sure. It's not really a fair question this late. It's not. And I recognize that. But Abby, I think it's interesting because I don't see a lot of people who are like aware of it at the level, with the context and the nuance that you're talking about it now. So just for anyone who this hits, who's thinking they understand the Sumerian thing because they read those books, I think there's a lot more there, and I just encourage everyone to keep digging. I don't know.
Yeah, always keep digging. Forever. That's why I'm so checked out half of the time. It's because I'm still digging.
Yeah. Yeah. So, ancient alien and astronaut theory, and I think it's all very fascinating, but I hesitate to speculate because we have like 150,000 years of modern human fossil record on this planet. We don't have anywhere near that. Our history goes back, well, what's the Sumerian, like 5,000-6,000 years ago? And we say that's a mother culture, but like then we have like
there's no way.
They inherited their knowledge from prior cultures, which we have some of the Tepe sites we know, but then going back to the Wisconsin Ice Age, like did people have the ability to survive an ice age? Absolutely. Yes. This isn't like we just popped out of caves and started, you know, bopping each other on the heads and procreating and like stumbled on language through mushrooms. Like they did, the whole thing's fucked. Shit
Yeah.
fucked.
Yeah.
And if you go back 150,000 years and you look at the record of like catastrophes, there have been like at least 15 major like just civilization ending catastrophes that we have fossil record of, like in that time, not even going back to the dinosaur ending level catastrophes, but just in the human, in like the from radical temperature changes to all kind of stuff. And I think there's just so many more questions than answers that we have, you know. The only point of view for me that's really acceptable is just ignorance, you know. They say in Zen, only don't know. I love that. Only don't know. That's like, it's like that's where I come back to. It's like, wow, this is also fascinating. But I don't know anything more than I knew like 2 hours ago. So for people who've been watching this, I apologize.
Yeah, it seems like the more you learn, the less you feel like you know.
Well, you know, they did find a Stonehenge underneath Lake Michigan. So, I mean, people were peopling way before Ice Age.
Yeah, they have no explanation for that still. Like none.
Yeah,
Nothing.
None. No, they have no idea.
Is it a calendrical henge, the Michigan one? Do they know?
They're really sketchy on what information they release. Like really.
I know. Did you know that Turkey has shut down Göbekli Tepe's excavations? They're saving it for fucking quote unquote future generations to excavate. Like there's nothing more relevant. And they're like, sorry, we just can't.
That's because the World Economic Forum bought the land or something.
It is. It has to do. It does have to do with the WEF. You're right. Yeah, it's fucked. Do you know a channel named Bright Insight? Do you know his work on YouTube?
Yes, I know.
Yeah, Bright Insights. Bright Insights, like at the heart of that. He's been sanctioned from Turkey. The government's like, no, you can't come here for his work. So his channel, yeah, catch up on it. It's pretty interesting.
That's a good sign that it's telling us that they found something they don't want us to know. For sure.
Oh yeah, that's a solid. Definitely. That's a solid. Oh shit, they were right. Let's bury it. Yeah. Yep. They don't do that when it matches the story they're trying to spin.
No,
you're right. I don't know. There's just something weird going on in the world. And I'm so glad we get together and talk about it. Oh, I know. It's like we're so isolated in the United States. I have a little cable box that I can get channels from like all over the world, and all they talk about is like how crazy we are, and all our news talks about is how everybody else is against us. Like they're not cool, we're the coolest, buy some more shit. That's been our experience. So yeah, I don't know, I love talking about this. I love talking about the ancient alien theory, actually. You know, it wouldn't be too far to say that, you know, we've been just living with you know, aliens the entire time. It's a possibility. I mean, we don't know what's going on the South Pole. We just know that everybody agreed that we're not allowed to go there.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on under the surface of the Earth. Not to imply that it's like hollow, but just that if you go to some ancient Vedic scriptures, they talk about the races that we share this planet with. Like it's just common fucking knowledge. Like there's Nagas, there's reptilian, subterranean, earth-dwelling people, and we need to respect them because we share a fucking planet with them. So chill the fuck out, everybody. Not what David Icke's talking about. A little what Krita Mutwa was talking about. But no, it's like when you read Buddhist scriptures, it's like, oh, the Buddha was present and there were like 100,000 fucking these kind of people and like a celestial crowd, and there were Nagas present. It's just like they were over there in the corner, fucking shapeshifters.
Yeah. Well, Blavatsky talked about all of this. Like, I just feel like nobody's like,
under the
yeah.
Yeah, which ties into why you can't go to Antarctica supposedly. But honestly, I my favorite thing about it, Nikki, is just that reality is so much stranger than any of the fictions we have about it. That like I don't know. I don't need to invent conspiracy theories. I'm already like mind blown. This is some kind of dream. Like at best, this is some kind of weird construct, very weird construct. And I don't need to dig deeper than real life or, you know, the amazing and fascinating. I just love that.
Well, that's probably a good place to wrap things up here. Again, anybody out there watching, everybody, all of us, our contact information is in the video description. And definitely check out Michael. Michael, at some point, I'd like to have a reading from you. My schedule is a little.
Oh, let's trade. Let's just trade. Like straight
yeah,
up.
we can definitely do that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. We'll
I'll reach out to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know I've told you an email, and I know I've told other people. But if I didn't mention it on this call, but you're for real, no offense to any other astrologers out there that are maybe going to come on our live stream, but you're the only astrologer on YouTube that I've watched like whole videos from, and you're definitely my favorite. So I'm
honored. I'm really honored. Thank you, because I know how deep your own research goes and how your perspective is informed by a spiritual and a meditation practice too. So that's very meaningful to me. I just don't want to say any more about that. But you're honestly one of my favorite people. I don't know much about you, but I appreciate anyone who's just so connected to things that they go back like as far as you can go and keep digging, because it's like a thing like so many people know that this isn't really like what's going on. There's some bullshit. But then who really does their due diligence? Not many people. And I direct people to you all the time for like the deep truth about stuff, even though I haven't taken your classes or haven't traded readings yet. But I want to get more involved. I really do. I want to take your classes and we'll trade readings and start there. So much.
I appreciate that. And I'm sure I speak for everybody else, but you're welcome back on the live stream anytime if you want to jump on here and talk go deeper into conspiracies or whatever.
Whatever we can get away with without getting your channel canceled.
That's right. Yeah. I'm not cool enough to cancel. I'm not worried about it. All right.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity just to be here. It's a delight.
And yeah, absolutely. It was our pleasure.
And Nikki. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Well, everybody have a good week. Anybody out there, if you want to hang out with us, we're on Zoom every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So we can jump on our meditation call. And otherwise, we'll just see everybody later and see you next week.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.